So like we mentioned on the previous video, right, that today we are going to talk to you guys about the top 5 recommended cleanup crews for you guys. So first up, let's talk about what is cleanup crew. So the word cleanup crew, or in short terms CUC, like most forums, or an acronym that you always hear, right, is a term where we use for inverts or even for fishes that actually do help with your reef tanks. So cleanup crew doesn't really have to be inverts. Most people will always assume that cleanup crew is inverts only, but no. Cleanup crews consist of everything that, as long as they do a job in your reef tank, they are counted as a cleanup crew. So for example, you have your snails, your shrimps, your crabs, your starfish, your abalones. What else is there? There is your fishes like tangs, your rabbitfish, urchins. Yeah, so it's not just about snails, but there's a huge variety of other stuff as well. So today, right, we're actually going to recommend you a couple of our top recommendations and why we do recommend these few different types of cleanup crew. So first up, let's talk about snails. Snails is a very big genre. There is a lot of different genuses, species out there that you guys can go for. I'm not going to touch on every single one of them. I'm just going to recommend a few that I really love. First one, it's the turbo snails. Turbo snails are by far one of the most affordable snails out there in the market. Regardless of which region, which country you are, turbo snails are abundant. They are usually relatively cheap, they are easy to get, and yeah, they are really good startups for new tanks especially. You don't really want to get the more specific cleanup crew kind of species for it. Turbo snails relatively does most of the stuff. I do recommend them for new tanks. Firstly, because they don't really die that easily compared to any other snails, and they do a really good job with diatom. So like most reef tanks, right, we always do have like the early diatom issue, and turbo snails actually do help that a lot. Rockwork wise, I don't think they're very good with nuisance algae like hair algae and stuff, but if you have a good amount of them, they do tend to do a pretty good job with your glass, your sand, that kind of so forth and so on kind of stuff. In terms of performance wise, I don't think that they are that awesome, but they are one of the inverts that I highly recommend if you start with. It's something that you really must have for most reef tanks. The second snail that I usually recommend, right, is one for sand. Highly recommended by every other people, which is your Narsarius Snails. Narsarius Snails are pretty interesting. These guys are not really cleanup crews. Okay, they are cleanup crews, but they don't really do nuisance algae. But what are their purpose in your reef tanks? So if you have a deep sand bed or even just a normal sand bed, right, it's good to have them, because Narsarius Snails are actually more of a scavenger than a snail that actually does like eat algae and stuff like that. So what actually does is, if you feed your tank, right, these guys usually, once you introduce them, they will actually burrow into the sand, and they have this little siphon tube that comes out from the front of the snail. When they sense food in the water, right, they tend to just emerge from the sand and then start scouring around the area for food, and they'll go back down again. So what that does is actually these snails will help to stir up your sand bed. If you feed every single day, you'll notice that your snails come in and come out, come in and come out every single day. So it actually keeps your sand kind of I would say it's like how to say, like you're turbiting your sand, moving your sand here and there. So it actually helps to reduce a lot of dead spots as well, in terms of like your sand turning brown and stuff like that. So the Narsarius Snails is really good with your sand part. The third snail that I'll recommend you, this is a bit hard to come by, which are your cowries. Cowries are it's a kind of snail that you don't really see that much in most local fish shops. Depending on which country you're from, cowries can be there, can be not there. There's a lot of different types of cowries as well. There's the smaller dollar cowries, there's all the way up to the larger ones. I always recommend the small cowries. They're really good though. Very interesting as well when they tend to have this flesh that covers their shell, which kind of look a bit funny because they have these like spike things all over them. But as you touch them, right, they'll retract that flesh and you show this really nice glossy shell like that they have. Really small, really good when it comes to algae cleaning. These guys actually do clean quite a really good job. I do have them in my tanks as well, so yeah, so I actually do recommend cowries a lot. And I noticed that cowries actually breed in tanks. I have my cowries actually breeding in tanks as well, so very interesting to watch, very interesting to look at. They're quite fun to have in your reef tank. So yeah, these are the 3 recommended snails that I do recommend you guys. Let's move on to the next recommendation. Also part of your mollusk family, which is your abalone. This is highly recommended recently. I have no idea why. Recently there's a lot of other YouTubers and stuff like that shares on their abalone journey. I used to be not a very big fan of them, because I always assumed that these guys are huge, bulky, and they are a bit terrifying. Like they will chomp down everything, especially for a reef tank. And a year ago I actually had a very bad hair algae issue, so I was struggling with all the different types of snails and stuff like that, and nothing really chomps down on hair algae. And I was contemplating between sea hare and the abalone, but as you guys know, sea hare is kind of thing that when you put it in, right, they will nuke your tank, and they usually, once they eat up everything, they will just die. So I ended up going with the abalone instead. I put one into the COVID tank. Until now I still have that abalone though. It really grows in size, and I assume that due to its really large size, it will hit every single thing or even run over everything in the tank. But no, these guys are pretty good when it comes to moving around corals, and I never had an issue with any of my corals drop because of an abalone. And these guys are nocturnal. They usually only come out at night, so very interesting though in the afternoon, or they usually just hibernate in the dark, but at night these guys are very active. And ever since I put the abalone in, right, I never really had any issue with hair algae. So this is why on the previous video I actually got 2 more, one for the Zoa tank and one for the Red Sea Nano. Updates after 2 weeks, right? The Zoa tank is almost cleared with hair algae, so I super love the abalone. So aside from snails, we move on to the other critters. Next thing that I'm going to talk about, you guys, is shrimps. Shrimps wise, there's 2 that I highly recommend though. Same for snails, there's a lot of different types of them. But the 2 that I really recommend, firstly, is the cleaner shrimps. Okay, same thing, these guys are not like a cleanup crew where they do like clean nuisance algae and stuff like that. No. Another myth that I want to bust for you guys is that people always say that cleaner shrimps help with white spot. That's nonsense, that's bullshit. They don't really do that. They do help a bit because they clean the fish mucus and stuff. It's just to ease the fish from that slime, that mucus slime that is covered with white spot. But they don't really cure white spot. That is just a myth. But what do they do? Firstly, yes, they do help your fish with the excess dead skin on their body. Secondly, these guys are really good with if you have issues with flatworms and even bristle worms. I've seen cleaner shrimps actually go out and hunt bristle worms. So if you have like worms issue, right, cleaner shrimps are actually one of the very good things. And they're also scavengers, so they actually help you to clean up all the unwanted waste food that is floating around or got trapped in any of the smaller crevices in your rock work. The second shrimp that I recommend, right, this is slightly pricey, especially for the end on our end of the world, which is your peppermint shrimp. These guys usually on average cost you about maybe $60 to $70 per shrimp. Kind of crazy though for a shrimp that you put it in and you don't really see it anymore. But why do we recommend peppermint shrimp is these guys are really good with aptasias. If you have aptasias issue, right, this is one shrimp that you should get. Cons about it is they're very expensive. They don't come out that often. You don't even see them most of the time. But the pros is that you don't really get much of an aptasia growth in your tank later on. I had a couple of them in COVID tank previously, and then it's been with me since the past few tanks already, so I think they died, which I kind of have a bit of an aptasia issue right now, so I'm actually going to plan to get a couple of them more again. Yeah, so the next recommendation that I recommend is not the shrimps anymore. I'm moving into urchins. Urchins, there's a lot of different types as well. You have your long spine, your short spine, your tuxedos, so forth and so on. The only one that I recommend you guys is tuxedos. Why? I never really like long spines or even urchin to begin with, because these guys are like bulldozers. They bulldoze everything in your tank, and it's kind of annoying because I think it's a what do you call it? It's more of like a defense mechanism, right? These guys tend to put things on their back. So yeah, so if you have issues where urchins start to put corals and stuff like that on their back, which is kind of annoying though. Like you tend to have your corals moving here and there, so I don't really like that kind of effect for them. That's why I only recommend the Tuxedo because it's smaller in size. Pretty colorful. There's either the red variant or the blue variant. They have the captive bred ones that's coming out soon from Biota as well. Really nice, really small size. Not the long spine kind that if you put your hand in, it may poke you, that kind of stuff. Tuxedos are usually relatively safe, so I will only recommend the Tuxedo Urchin. So we have spoken about snails, shrimps, urchins. The next one that I will talk to you guys about is the crabs. This is like a love-hate relationship. I never like crabs. They are kind of annoying though. Most of the time they will eat stuff or they'll attack something. Couple of notable recommendations I'll give you guys. Hermits wise, go for the blue-legged. These guys are like one of the best. In terms of scavenging food, these guys are like one of the best. If you have bubble algae issue, go for emerald crab. But these guys, like everybody mentioned before, right? These guys are hit or miss. They sometimes do take corals, so always plant your emerald crabs properly. Especially if you don't want to overstock emerald crabs. Once they finish up all the algae, right, they will go for your coral next. So crabs wise, not a big fan, but these are the two recommended that I do recommend for you guys. There's a lot of different types as well. There's like your Halloween hermits and the other types of crabs, but no, I tend to try to stay away from crabs. Okay, so we've talked about snails, we talk about shrimps, we talk about abalone, we talk about urchins, we talk about crabs. Couple of other cleanup crews that's out there in the market as well. You have your starfish. Starfish, a couple of different types, your sand sister, linkias, that kind of stuff. They do good when it comes to like sand sifters, right? They're good for sand. If you go for like the Bristol stars, those guys are really good scavengers though. But I don't really recommend sea stars as well because firstly, sea stars, if you see Patrick, right? Patrick is kind of a bit of a dumb character. So yeah, if you get that thing is actually related to its real the animal itself. Starfish don't really have brain. So if you tend to have issue where you put a starfish in and your starfish didn't move for the next few days and it started to rot, right? This is the reason why. Because starfish are very bad with acclimating, because they don't really have a brain, so they don't really adapt, they don't really think. So if you didn't do your acclimation properly for starfish, right, chances are when you throw it in, it tends to just stay there, stay put next few days, and you start to see them decompose. And they don't tend to last that long compared to the other cleanup crews. So this is why I don't really recommend. Not saying that it's no good. I've seen sand sifter stars in a lot of reef tanks as well. I do recommend them, just that if you really want to get a sea star, go for the sand sifter and make sure that you do your acclimation properly. Same goes for shrimps as well. Cleaner shrimps, peppermint shrimp, these guys are very sensitive when it comes to acclimation. So not all cleanup crews are hardy. Snails wise, abalone wise, I think it's quite okay. If you match the temperature, you can throw them in. But when it comes to shrimps, when it comes to sea stars, right, these are the kind of stuff that you should always do an acclimation properly. So we've talked about all the different inverts already, right? There are a couple of other different types of cleanup crews that you can get as well, which also not just play a role as a cleanup crew, but also aesthetically wise, as a part of a display piece. I'm talking about fishes. There's so many different types of fish that actually do jobs in cleaning up your tanks as well. Your surgeon fishes, your tanks are one of the most highly sought after fish. These guys do very good with algae. If you feed them moderately, don't overfeed them, right? These guys tend to graze on your rockwork every single day. Yeah, so get a tank, don't feed them, don't overfeed them. I'm not saying don't feed them, but don't overfeed them. Make them do the work, make them go and graze on your rockwork. Aside from tanks wise, there is your Blennies. The algae Blennies are really, really good when it comes to algae. It's literally just a name there, like Mower Blenny, right? It's stated there as Mower Blenny. It's going to do its job by cleaning up hair algae. Even if I don't have hair algae, right, I do have one in my tank as well, just preventive measures. Couple of that, like a rabbitfish, so far and so on. Yeah, so there's a lot of different fishes that you guys can get for your tanks as well. Aside from that, I think we are almost done with today's video already. We've mentioned about fish, mentioned about snails, mentioned about crabs, mentioned about urchins, mentioned about what else? The abalones, so far and so on. So yeah, I think it's kind of a little bit long video already. If you guys have any other questions that you guys want to ask about cleanup crews, right, do look me up in my Instagram page. DM me, drop a comment down below on what other issues that you guys have in the different types of cleanup crew. I would answer your questions. I'll try to answer most of your questions if possible. If not, then yes, I think we're done for this week's video. Same thing, if you like other videos that we've done for you guys, hit that subscribe button, like, share it out. We are at 1.91 if I'm not wrong, so it's about maybe the 19-ish more of you guys to 2,000 subscribers, so we are almost hitting there already. So same thing, if you're not subscribed, please do hit that subscribe button for more of all these contents out there. Big thanks to every single one of you guys out there for subscribing. Yeah, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you guys soon next week.